Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up.
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
Where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands.
upcoming tours,
And show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
January 16th, 2023.
All right, welcome back to All That Jam, the second week in January. You would think it would be downtime, but there is a lot of stuff going on. We have an interview with Toni Brown from Relix coming up. We also have the top three stories of the week, and we're going to close out with a little bit more of our New Year's moments. I know it's been a few weeks, and it's still nice to look back. How are you doing this week, Amanda?
Hi, Kevin. I am great. Got to see some good music on Friday night, which was fantastic.
Oh, that's right. You went to who was that? Yonder Mountain?
Yeah, so I went to the first night of Denver Comes Alive, which was a two-night benefit show here at the Mission Ballroom. It was fantastic.
And then the second night was, the first night had what? Maggie Rose, Women of Winter or something?
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in one of my top stories. Kitchen Dwellers were there, Yonder, really, really fun night.
Nice. And then the next night it was Lettuce and a bunch of different, it wasn't a bluegrass feel, it was more of the jazz funk feel.
Oh, yeah, The Word with John Medeski. Tough to make a decision. It was like they picked both sides of my music brain.
Have you ever gotten to see the Word before?
I haven't. And so I was definitely a little disappointed to miss. I know it's fantastic. Have you?
They were, yes, I saw them years ago at the 930 the first time they toured.
Oh,
So it was a long ago, and I walked out of there. I was like, "That's my favorite band. I'm going on tour with them."
I love that feeling. That's a great feeling.
It is fantastic. Very good, very good. So why don't we jump into your top three stories of the week?
The top three stories of the week.
Yeah, Kevin. So I've got a couple stories here, one of which I really want your opinion on. But let me start with what I guess is the latest band to announce either a departure of a longtime member or a hiatus of some kind. I feel like this has been kind of happening a bunch lately. Aqueous out of Buffalo. They're one of those groove rock quartets. They've been around for such a long time. Announced they're going to go on an indefinite hiatus after they do some early tour dates this year. And that decision comes after their keyboardist slash guitarist slash vocalist, Dave Loss, welcomed a baby last year. So I feel like, this is happening, right? We've
Oh,
kind of seen this.
I tweeted out the other day that, as sad as it is to see the hiatus come up, good for him because that's the most important thing in the world you can do is be there for that kid.
Completely agree. And I don't want to ever jump in and say, oh, this is a trend or whatnot, but it is nice on the one hand to see people making what I know have to be really difficult decisions that are the best thing for them.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. You're either at the place where like Fish was that you can afford to only tour a couple months a year and spend the time with the family, or you're a road dog and you have to get off the road.
Yeah, and when you're talking about in his case 16 years, you put that time in, and I think you can't take anything away from that. So I know, between Spafford, Twiddle, others, there's just been people making decisions, and definitely respect that. So wanted to give that one some time today. Kevin, I know this maybe isn't technically news, but Jazz Fest is incredible, as we know. And I just recently saw they had posted their lineup. So wanted to talk a little bit about that. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
All right. Well, as always, lots of chatter. Same with High Sierra, I guess, to that point. But let's maybe focus on Jazz Fest for a second. What do you think?
It's the headliners Lizzo, Santana, all that. I got down to line six and below, and that's where I started salivating. I mean, you had Galactic, the Rads, John Mooney, just off the top of my head, Tommy Malone. Wu Tang is playing with Soul Rebels. I believe. So yeah, there was some fantastic stuff buried deeper down in the lineup.
It almost takes me probably 30 minutes to really look through the list, at least the one that they initially put out, because I know there's going to be, hundreds of other artists too. But
Right.
um,
I really like the cubes, the day the cubes come out, because then it's all laid out and it's easier to read. And the top of the headliners are going to be along the bottom. And
oh, yeah, for sure, for sure. Got to give a shout out to a couple of bands I saw that I have absolutely love. Big Sam's Funky Nation. They've been around for a long time. You don't see them too many places, but they're just a lot of fun. Really enjoy them for sure. And Keb Mo, yeah, there's so much in there.
yeah. And did you also see the Days Between festival that someone's doing on Tuesday and Wednesday in between the two weekends?
Yes, and I think that is like Live for Live music related,
Yes, I believe
right?
so. And it has Neil Francis, Tank and the Bangers, a bunch of big names.
Oh yeah. I guess if you like music, you know where you need to be.
You go to New Orleans. Next year, I'm trying to take my kids. They're old enough now that I could go out at night and not worry about them, even though they'd probably go out once I went out and I'd get a phone call at 4 in the morning. But that's another story.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to expect certain things when you're down in a place like that.
I would expect nothing less of them. So,
Did I ever tell you I almost made it to Jazz Fest once? I mean, this is kind of a dark cloud over my live music experience. I've never been there.
wow. Yeah, I went every year for 10 years from 95 to 2003, 9 years, I guess. And I
Mm.
hit Mardi Gras once in there because I wanted to go to the secret ball that the Radiators did called Mom's Ball.
Oh, I bet that was incredible.
Well, this year apparently Mike Dillon and Punkadelic are playing. When I spoke to Mike the other day, he was telling me that he's going to be playing that over Mardi Gras. So I'm happy to see that they're continuing the tradition down there.
Good, good. Well, I love it. I know we're going to be talking more about Jazz Fest in the next couple months too, but
Yes.
always an interesting thing to see that initial lineup. And then third story for this week. This is the one, Kevin, that I was really curious to chat with you about, and this actually does relate to that Denver Comes Alive set of shows this weekend. So you're right. On Friday night, the Winter Wonder Women played. I'll talk a little bit about who they were, and then Saturday had its own group, the Supersonic Shorties is what they were called. And I mean, so many incredible, incredible musicians. The Saturday night female group had Nikki Glaspie, who another punkadelic connection there. That she's such an incredible drummer. And then, of course, Jennifer Hartswig. She's always in the mix. I feel like she makes it everywhere, don't you think, Kevin?
Yes, she does. She's one of those people that's always popping up, like our friend Eric Krasno, and
Oh yeah.
we've had a few other names that keep popping up again and again.
100%. Amy Bellamy, she's based in Boston. She's an incredible keyboardist. And then, Friday night, it was kind of like a bluegrass, I guess, superstar show with Lindsay Lou. You had also Emma Rose. She's from Big Richard. They've been making their name out there. Mimi Naja. But here's my question. Should there need to be a place for these specially named female only groups? Is that something that at this point in time should have to be a thing, do you think? Or is this actually really needed to have, these kind of selected groups of women? I love it, but sometimes it just almost feels like, is it being pushed too much?
I guess for me it is the force thing. It's, hey, we have to do this instead of it being an organic thing, like with Ghostlight you ended up with Holly and Raina in there. But the hope, I guess, is you put this together and the magic happens and then it actually does become a thing.
Hmm. Yeah, and there's an article on Live for Live Music where I think they tried to address this. So I want to read this to you. Says both bands happen to be comprised entirely of women, but both will tell you that the novelty factor of that demographic makeup is not the main consideration. And talent aside, I do think though that there's something to it, and maybe that should be looked at ultimately as a positive. I hope at some point we can get past the point of even making the name of these kind of showcase projects so clear
Right.
that it's just women, right?
I I wish that it was that there were enough women in the jam scene that it wouldn't even be a second thought that it was all women, just like it isn't a second thought if a band has all men.
Yeah, like Winter Wonder dudes.
Right. The fact that the population is over 50% women, why aren't over 50% of jam band musicians women?
I know. I mean, I'm grateful to all those women for what they do for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it because that was something that popped into my head on Friday night when I was listening. And those are my three stories, Kevin. That's what I got.
Very nice. Very nice. We're going to get into actually a little bit here in a minute with Tony Brown about abuse in the scene. So going again to being a woman in a man's world, so to speak. But our first clip we're going to listen to, Amanda, is the about the early days, and she tells a funny story, maybe not funny, about the mob and Relix in the early days. So let's take a listen to that, and we'll talk about it on the other side. I read that it's the second longest continuously published music magazine in the United States after Rolling Stone.
Okay, we were right after we came out literally within a year of Rolling Stones. So yes, that is true.
Can you go through that? Because it was basically tapers, right? It was a couple guys who were just trying to connect tapers to start
Well,
with.
I'll just say their names. It was Les Capel and Jerry Moore. They were, and I'm just going to say it, assholes that just wanted to take the music home with them. The Grateful Dead did not like people taking the music home with them, and they just got grief all the time. And I understand that part of it. But the Grateful Dead were not happy. They never were. They never really accepted Les, who was the person who really was the person starting Relix. And he, we met and he brought me in, and I just took it over because people didn't really want to work with him because, he Les is a very, very uh, aggressive businessman. He's a very good businessman, and he was very good for that. I mean, he created a lot of momentum, merchandising for Bill Graham. He's done a lot. But when it came down to it, I was the magazine and the soft person and the place to land. And I worked with all the musicians, and I also was the publicist for everything. So I really was the spokesperson and the person behind Relix magazine, and I'm proud of that. So.
There's got to be a lot of trust, I would imagine, just thinking of those relationships, especially at that point where this is something that's still a new concept. How did you get to that place where you were that spot to land, like you said, or was that something you already had?
I came to the game with it.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm exactly that person that I would want to be. I'm soft spoken and I care, and I really really love the music. I love people, and I and I'm a musician. I started playing music professionally at 16, and right as soon as I started sort of getting out playing in and that was in the Bronx, New York, and I would just it was casual, but Janis Joplin and Grace Slick were people that were, they helped bring the women vibe to being able to play music because let's face it, they wanted me to sing backup. They'd let me sing, you know, Grace's songs, but I had to step up a little bit to become my own. I was a songwriter even then. They never let me play that stuff, but the I think the interesting thing that Ed and I just came to recently was that I was being courted by other musicians. There was a band that called the Cherry People out of Washington D.C., and it was the first 45 I ever bought. And somehow these guys heard about me and they came to see me, and I thought this can't be real. And then Tom Fogerty came along, and I said the same thing. And now we were talking just a few weeks ago, and I realized this really happened. And it happened because they were courting women musicians, and people knew me. I was out performing. at 16. So sure, why not? Let's get this little 16-year-old girl in here, and she's going to be 17. That's going to be really cool. But anyway, so that's kind of where I started, and I just always felt akin to the music. I always wanted to put on a show, even when I was little. I was just like, whenever family would come over, I'd be putting on a show. So, because I have to say that in the early Relix years, there were things. I mean, the Mafia came after us because, we were involved with merchandising, and and Bill Graham wanted full license. He had the licensing rights to things, and the Mafia was coming after us because we lived in Brooklyn, and they really were very, very incensed that they couldn't sell these like bootleg T-shirts that they were making, and they were following us and threatened my life and my son's life. It was, and that was in the early years, and it really it colored my vision of what part of the Relix experience that I wanted to be in, and the merchandising was not that. It was too, that was dark, and there were other people in our office that could do that. That wasn't me. So, we had a lot of incidences with the bootlegging situations, and having merchandise stolen and things like that. So yeah,
The original $5 lot shirts.
those black T-shirts that were
Yeah.
like, "There's nothing like a Grateful Dead concert,"
It's
or
a little
whatever they were.
crooked.
Yeah, yeah, pretty rough, and but you know what? It was interesting because every T-shirt got the name out there, so there was that.
It's guerrilla marketing, is what I call it.
That's what it is, very much.
I don't know why things like that should surprise me, that mob story, because growing up in Jersey, I just felt like you were always hearing stories like that. But I think it's definitely just this layer to the scene, maybe especially in those days. And Toni was definitely around to see some pretty interesting stuff.
She was. She was. Yeah, I love it. We have there's a lot more to this interview. Let's put it that way. That's going to appear somewhere, but we had to edit it down for time constraints. This next clip we're going to listen to is about the record label that she started, Relix Records, and all the great bands. And she tells a great little story about Robert Hunter and the guitar. So let's check that out and come back on the other side. You did the record label. Can you talk about how that came about? Because Hot Tuna, Matt Kelly, Savoy Brown, all these older bands I learned about, and then you had the Zero and Living Earth, Solar Circus, Max Creek.
No,
I
you've
mean, how
done your
did that
homework.
happen?
You've
Oh,
done
well,
your
I
homework.
bought them. I had a subscription to Relics in 1985,
Thank you.
86, 87. Yeah, it was my lifeline. It was my way into culture from suburban America.
Yeah, well, yeah, there were just I Robert Hunter came out with an album. Um, it was his first release. It was not Tales of the Great Rum Runners.
Tiger Rose?
Tiger Rose, thank you. It was Tiger Rose, and he had released it in England, and of course wasn't getting anywhere with that because England it just wasn't involved in that way in that moment. But he Robert Hunter called us up and said, "Hey, I want to release this album in the States, and I want you guys to put it out." And Les Capel and I were like thrilled with that idea because we had already been thinking about starting a record label because, again, not only was I a musician, but we were working with musicians, and it just seemed like a good fit. So we did that. We released that, and then I think it was Flight of the Marie Helena, or there was just a number of them. I don't know the sequencing of them, but
Alive in 85 is
Alive in
probably one of my
'85.
favorite albums of all time just because Hunter's talking and it's just,
Oh,
him
it's
playing.
really awesome, isn't it? I know. Yeah, he was quite the mentor to me. The guitar that he gave me meant a lot, and it just bolstered my confidence. And he talked a lot to me about songwriting, and he was just very generous with his time and his energy with me. So I appreciated that a lot. It's really special. And losing him was, it was just too soon for me. And I actually wrote a song. I didn't realize I wrote it, but I must have written it right in the early times of COVID. And this song was, it's called Tidal Wave. And I found it on my nightstand and I didn't remember writing it. And I thought, this is very Hunter. Did he write it? And he didn't. I wrote it. But it it spoke to me in some dream, and it's now a song. So I wanted that to be on our new project because it's important to me, to take those inspirations that come in the night, when you're really not looking for an idea, to cherish that and work with it. So we'll see how it goes.
You know, Kevin, with anything related to Robert Hunter, I am just always mesmerized, and I cannot imagine what it would be like to truly call someone like that a great friend and a mentor. Really glad that Toni had what seemed to be such positive, fond memories and experiences there. Unfortunately, maybe not surprisingly though, Toni did get very honest with us and talk about different types of abuse that she herself experienced, but also that she's seen over the years. So definitely want to take a listen to that. Your work and being in the room or backstage for so many of those moments, I think has really helped in general to just make it a place that, we can be. And not only is it all right for us to be there, we should be there because,
Absolutely. We're
to your
part of
point,
it.
we bring so many aspects and personality traits, right, to that work. One thing I've always been really curious about, and I kind of have my own opinion on this, but seeing so much of the back end of the industry, I mean, really being there, did that ever change your opinion of the music itself or your love for it in any way? It doesn't seem like it, but I was just curious about that.
I had a lot of tears shed.
Mm-hmm.
I was abused a lot. I was physically abused. And to this day, I work very intensely on Facebook to mentor women who have, um, the losing end of narcissistic abuse at the hands of men. I see women who go to, and young women too, especially go to concerts, festivals, whatever, and I see their conversations, and it appalls me at what they have to put up with. Because for me, I was one of very few women in the scene, and now it's flooded. But the problems that existed for me as a young person when I went on the Hell's Angel boat ride around Manhattan, and I had to hide because the Hell's Angels were insane, and they even threw a woman overboard as the boat took away pulled away from the dock. And you're talking about in the Hudson River. They threw her into the Hudson River, and I'm like, and here's Jerry Garcia playing, and Donna Jean's there, and I think Merle was there. It was a beautiful event, but I was scared to death. And there were concerts in my early years where I went and I just basically hid in the back, because there weren't a lot of women around, even just to see the shows. So, I have a lot of knowledge in that area. I have a lot of compassion, but I also see the problems and have studied very intensely on narcissistic abuse because it is a problem, and it's a very big problem within our scene. Mostly coming down, and I'm just going to say it, from the male end. There are narcissistic women, but the men are the deliverers of most abuse.
Well, Kevin, some of that's hard to hear, but I think it's always so important, especially for someone like Toni Brown, to be sharing that so we can keep those types of situations in the forefront of our mind and actually have really connected Toni to Groove Safe too. So excited to see maybe there's some different ways that we can find solutions to that issue.
A lot of the issues I think overlap with the narcissism and the entitlement and the violation of a woman's space at shows and things. So the last thing we did, of course, we had to talk about tapers because, as she said earlier, Relix started as a taper connection thing, and so let's take a listen to that. When we come back on the other side, we're going to get into a little bit of the New Year's moments from our Twitter, Instagram posts.
Those are some of my favorite stories ever, actually, talking to tapers. And invariably, that's part of the conversation. I think, Kevin, that's one of the things that you and I first bonded over was just
Yep.
how did they get the gear in, in those
They,
days.
they'd like have a wheelchair and just re-outfit that wheelchair with parts. And I'll tell you, the early Relix people really worked their butts off because they wanted to take that music home. And the Grateful Dead weren't really hearing it. And I understand the Grateful Dead's perspective on a business level, but that's what made them. That's what gave them their momentum, their fame. Hey, listen to this tape. So
What do you think made them give up the ghost on that in 83 or 84 when they started with the taper section?
um, it was too much fighting and this is exactly why the Deadheads would be fighting over, you're in my space, you're talking and you're messing up my tape and blah blah blah. So there was actual violence happening as a result of it. So the Grateful Dead said, all right, let's make a taper section. They need to be verified in that area, and it made sense. And I think it was a really good move because it
Brilliant.
it definitely quelled the problems that were existing. There were still plenty of problems, mostly guys grabbing girls' boobs, but but there were many things. I see. Yes, and
When it took hiatus.
okay, so remember the Grateful Dead took a hiatus? Those tapes kept fans listening to the music. There was no break. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm.
those tapes were so important to everyone, including the Grateful Dead, because it kept the vibe alive. It got more people involved, interested.
They came back with a bigger fan base than
They
they
sure
left
did.
with.
They sure did. So it was magical. It still is.
Again, all right, she's just fantastic. Like I said, there's some other tape of the interview. We're going to get that out at some point in the future. Also, go over www.allthatjampod.com, sign up for the email list, find us on Twitter, Instagram at allthatjampod. And if you go on Apple, please leave us a review. Give us that 5-star. If you're over on Spotify, like, follow, however it works over there or wherever you get your podcast. And Amanda, let's jump into. We had asked a question a few weeks ago about New Year's moments, and we only got a couple of the answers. We wanted to throw a few more out this week so our listeners know that we're paying attention.
That's right. And I think everyone's had a chance now to rest up and maybe just reflect on their New Year's experience. Sometimes I know that takes me a while. So yeah, I wanted to share a couple of these. We asked favorite moment, and because our audience and listeners are so awesome, they shared musical and non-musical moments. So here's a couple for you. Let's see, at M Split 98, for him, musical, realizing Fluffhead was being jammed, which he said was full circle from his third show at Alpine 99. That's got to be pretty cool. I've had some moments like
Yeah,
that too,
that's fun.
actually.
That's
Yeah,
fun.
definitely. I've had some memories come back like that. Non-musical, love this one. Apparently, it's a long story that would deserve its own thread. Maybe we need to investigate this, but it involved waiting for an Uber at the Hustler Club and explaining fish to the ladies. So
Nice.
I would love to have been there for that. At Vernon Tom had an experience very similar to mine. The sofa was the highlight for him. So, some of us, that's what we got.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually mentioned night 3 of Fish, tremendous. At Rob HAEW, at Punil76, all of them and more actually talked about that, and had some Goose reactions as well. At MEBCA said, besides everything, I have to say our seat neighbors, and this was at Goose, same couple all 4 nights. That's pretty cool. Kindest people, and all their friends already knew our names when they came to the seats. Friendship for life definitely made. I love that.
Nice.
Yeah. Other highlights in the Goose world, Echo and Arcadia from at Steely Drew. Uh, B Gets, we got to get him on the show. I'm going to work on this. Up Full Life, best part of the New Year's week. He was marked safe from all jam bands on the New Year's Eve run. He thinks he's over noodly guitar solos once and for all. So he has crossed to the other side, Kevin.
Nice.
He made it out. And then let's see, I'll just share a couple more here. At Host of G said, tender moment. I dropped a drink, which was a splurge buy at MSG, and an event staff manager witnessed it, grabbed me, took me to the front of the drink line, and politely asked the lady, who I've seen for 10 years at MSG, to get me another drink, said Happy New Year, and took off. I swear, MSG is such a great place to see a show for that reason.
Unless you're a lawyer.
Unless you're, oh yeah, right. Clearly, I'm not. I didn't think about that. And then I'll end with this one. My good friend Katie at Kathleen ATL. Non-musical moment. Unhinged Twitter. People trying to couch tour more than one show at a time. That was me for the 30th, and I couldn't do it on the 31st. So I think she might have been referring partially to me.
Yeah, I was couch touring Goose last night and trying to watch the Ravens lose at the same time, so that was interesting.
Ooh, okay. That sounds exhausting, to be honest with you.
It was exhausting.
Never mind seeing some of the cover choices, but I'm not going to get into that.
Right. All right. So that's great. So we got that. If you follow us on social media, we're going to ask these great questions. We want to hear what you think. We love interacting. So make sure you do that. Next week, we're going to have Raina Mullen from Ghostlight on. We'll talk a little bit about Holly leaving the band. We got into philosophy of life, songwriting. She was a fantastic interview. So make sure that you tune in for that. You have anything else before we go, Amanda?
Let's see here. I know that we're coming up to just a lot of tours either starting or already underway. So I anticipate we're going to have a lot of good stories. I'd love to get some stories from our listeners from the road. So I'm going to see if we can make that happen.
Nice. Very nice. All right. Well, everybody, you know where to find us. Please hook up with us out there in social media land. And remember, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll talk to you soon, Amanda.
Bye, Kev.
All right. We're rock stars, Amanda.